Hello, everybody. It's Mari-Lyn Harris here of Hard at Work, and this is my series of podcasts that I've been doing about how to create an impactful legacy for your business. So the idea of it is really just to bring on speakers and trainers and all the experts that are in this field to help you to have a higher performing workplace. And when you do that, of course, you create an impactful legacy for yourself and for your workplace. So today I have on the call is LeBron Barton, and he was introduced to me by my friend Sejal. And anyway, so we're just having a lot of fun here. So welcome, LeBron. I'm sorry, LeBron.
No, yes. Yeah, just it's LeRon. Thank you, Mari-Lyn, for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. How are you today?
I'm doing great. So we were talking, and he has a great TED talk that I watched, and he talked about his stuttering experience and how he overcame that. And so, that's just one thing, I guess, that impedes our communication at work if we have a problem, and nobody does want to take the time or be patient with us as we go through our little challenges that we have, right? So, LeBron?
Yes. I'm sorry, Mari-Lyn. I'm sorry. It's LeRon.
LeRon, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
LeRon.
I don't know. It's okay.
Okay,
All right.
so tell me a little bit how you got started doing what you're doing now,
Yeah.
and we'll kind of go from there.
No problem. So I've been writing. I mean, gosh, I've been writing since I was really young. I come from a family of artists. My mother, she was a writer. My grandfather, was a painter. My aunt studied fashion design in college. My brother is a great illustrator. And my father, he's an actor. So and also, I'm sorry, not to leave out my grandmother, but she's a voracious reader. So I
Right.
come from this rich background of just the appreciation of the arts.
Mhm.
And so I have been writing short stories since I was really young. Started to uh, turn those stories and began to develop myself as a poet. Went to Paseo Academy of Fine Arts in Kansas City, Missouri, and met a really important person in my life, the great Stan Banks, who helped develop my craft. And I then authored two books back in 2013, Straight Dope, a 360-degree look into American drug culture, and All We Really Need Is Love, stories of dating, relationships, and heartbreak. That came out in 2015. And then from there, Mari-Lyn, I began to write essays about race, mass incarceration, politics, dating, just to keep it a little light. And I then, in 2018, I began to do public speaking because I really like telling stories, and I just really like talking to people. So
Right, right.
that's how
And
that came about.
yeah, and so why did you write your books? Just because you just like to write, or is it because you're trying to
Well,
solve a problem?
so
Defense something?
that's a really good question. So I had a lot of my friends when I was in high school and after, we were sort of a collective of artists. We had painters, we had sculptors, we had musicians, and everyone had a piece of work that they can point to and say, hey, I made this. This comes from me. That has my name on it. And I didn't have anything that I can point to. And so writing a book was always one of my biggest goals. So, I would say, oh, well, I'm going to write this book. I'm going to write this book. And I would always do like I'm gonna, right. But it's like, I would get stuck on I'm gonna. And so it wasn't until, to be honest with you, it was, back in 2012, my then ex-girlfriend, she broke up with me, and it really just sort of sent my world into sort of a tailspin, Mari-Lyn. And I've never told this to anybody, but I wanted to write that book partly because I wanted to show her that she messed up, right? And it's like, I kind of use like the fuel of the breakup towards, not only me writing the book, but also traveling and eventually moving from San Diego to San Francisco. So that was a fuel. And my book, Straight Dope, you know, I was influenced by a writer by the name of Studs Terkel. Have you ever heard of Studs at all?
No.
Okay, yeah, Studs is an amazing writer. He's not so much of a writer as he's an editor. And so, you know, Studs, what he does, Mari-Lyn, is I'm sorry, what he did, unfortunately, Mr. Terkel passed years ago, but he would pick a topic. Say, for example, he wanted to write about jobs, so he wrote a book called Working. Mm-hmm. So he would pick a topic and he just interview people about that one topic, and then he would just sort of like edit their answers. And so he wrote Working. He wrote a book called Division Street about life in Chicago. He wrote the greatest book I've ever read on racism called Race. He wrote a book about post 9/11 called Hope Dies Last. That's how I got introduced to Mr. Terkel. And so I wanted to do that. I wanted to talk to people about drugs in America. And so what I did was I took what Studs did, but then I added my poetry, as well as just these little short stories about my life as far as drugs. And, you know, and that's how Straight Dope came about.
Okay. So how do you do with your books and your creative life and your family and everything? Does that equate to anything in the workplace? Do you have anything in that regard or stories that you want to share, that how some of your research or your book could resolve in the workplace issue at all? Or is it just more about in general?
You know what? That's a really good question. So being that the book is all about, you know, a certain topic, and it's essentially me listening to people, I've taken those tools, Mari-Lyn, and it's allowed me to be a better listener. You know, like so one of the biggest things that people don't do is they don't listen with their full attention, right? It's like a lot of times when you have a conversation with somebody, right? And, you know, I was guilty of this last night.
Right.
When you're talking with somebody and they're making a point, you already have a response loaded up. So It's almost like you don't really care what they're saying. You just want to just like make your point across. So when you listen fully, when you're taking in whatever the person is saying, you get a chance to process everything that they say, right? And so then you can, if you choose to respond, you can respond in a way that is more respectful, that is more intelligent. You know, because if you already have a response loaded up, you're not really caring what they have to say. So writing the books, Mari-Lyn, it's allowed me to be a much better listener. So I mean, that's that's one of the many tools that I have taken from being a writer, as well as just, you know, interacting with different people. Gosh, you know, I've written, essays about, allyship, about talking with trans people. And so every time I write an essay like that, I'm able to interact with people from different parts of the world, from different walks of life easier. You know, so it serves me, because, you know, not only is it, you know, teaching me to be a better writer, but it's also teaching me personal skills.
Right. So let's go back to listening. So how can people learn to listen better? Since you've said you're able to learn it from writing your books and talking to people. So tell us a little bit, some lessons or tips about how we can become better listeners without the automatic response that we tend to give.
Right. You know, for me, one of the things that I try to do, and I'm not always successful with this, Mari-Lyn, but I'm very conscious of this, is that if someone's talking to me, I turn directly to them,
Mm-hmm.
and I try to give them my undivided attention, keyword try, because I mean, I'm the type of guy where I have like 30 different things going on, right?
Right.
And so a lot of that comes from being present. See, you can always tell when someone's present, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they're giving you their attention, if they're really taking in what you have to say, the eye contact, or people sort of head and facial movements, body language.
Right.
And so for me, I would say, when someone's talking to me, I try to put the phone down. I turn directly to them. I stop typing on my laptop.
Right.
I stop writing, because what that does, Mari-Lyn, is that not only does that allow you to hear them completely, but it's also a sign of respect, and it's a sign that you are acknowledging them and that you are valuing what they're giving you. And I think gosh, like that, that creates trust. It creates a more respectful rapport. I mean, it's nothing but positives that come out of that.
Right. Right. And so how does one person stop from, like you were saying, it's all about respect, giving them your attention, undivided attention, not
Yes,
just
ma'am.
attention. And then, so what are some of the things that you would suggest or you've learned that to not just come back with, oh, well, you're going to bring up this point, I'm going to talk to you, give you my answer on that point, rather than.
Right.
So what are some tips that, I liked your answer, but like, what are some other things that people can respond with rather than react with in the conversation?
Right. I like that. Responding versus reacting. Darn, that's pretty awesome. It's up. You like Mari-Lyn, she's just dropping knowledge. What I would say is that when someone tells you something, just pause for a second, take it in, just sit with it for some seconds. Don't be so afraid. I mean, like, don't be so quick to just ram, but just really like sit with that answer, and just sort of go over what they said to you. A lot of times, Mari-Lyn, people always want to have the last word, right? And it's kind of a sad thing that where we are, where it's like, oh well, I want to be the one to walk away, and I told you off. And it's like, look, it's not about that. It's not about coming out on top. It's not about trying to shut somebody down. Like, if you're having a conversation with somebody, and if you're really trying to understand where they come from, then it's not about, the one-upmanship. It's just like, okay, let me really understand where you're coming from, because you can't understand where someone's coming from if you're not giving them if you're not giving them your attention, and if you're just sort of just not even present. And again, like, I'm not perfect. Like, I struggle with being present all the time, but it's something that I am actively working on, because when I'm present, I give a better answer. Like right now, Mari-Lyn, I'm sitting up here honestly looking at the wall, and I'm looking at my phone while I talk to you, because I want this interview to be great. I'm not on my laptop, browsing the internet. No, I'm like, look, let's sit here. Let's look at this off-white wall, and let's really think about what Mari-Lyn's asking me, so I can give a better answer.
Right. And so I know we're not perfect, and we all have, but when we're responding, it's sort of like, I guess what you were saying is we have a better answer when we're listening, but it's like taking a deep breath before you respond.
Absolutely.
And then just saying, okay, this is what I heard you say. And because sometimes we take it as an attack, which has nothing to do with attack, right? It may be just trying to understand what the problem is at work. It's sort of like saying, okay, I heard you say this. Is that what you meant? And Because that kind of helps
Exactly.
create the trust and the dialogue that you can have with each other. So,
Absolutely. You know,
you know,
one of the
yeah,
I'm sorry, Mari-Lyn. Please continue.
no, go ahead. Just
No,
say,
like, you know, one of the things that I like to do is, you know, I like to say, okay, so I heard you. What you're saying is, and I'll pretty much say back, or in so many words, summarize what they said to me back to them, just so we're on, you know, the same ground, right? Just
right,
so what you're saying to me is A, B, C, and D. Is that correct? And I'll ask them,
right,
am I clear here? And so after we're clear, because I mean, you got a chance to sort of summarize it and to sort of repeat all the key points that that person said.
right.
Then that tells them that A, you've listened to them, right?
Mhm.
And that, you know, you're just not going off the handle and just, you know, and B, after you said it again, you can then have a more intelligent response. See, listening, it comes easy for me because I love hearing people's stories, man. Like you know, for example, I was out with friends last night, and I'm just asking questions like, you know, my friend Reggie was telling me about the evolution of house music in Chicago, and I'm just blown away. And so I'm just asking him questions. So it's like it comes easy for me because I'm an inquisitive dude, period.
Right.
But at the same time, like if someone is asking me something or is telling me something and wanting a response, I want to make sure that I've heard everything that you said, you know, even if it's an attack, if it's just, if it could be negative, neutral, positive. I just want you to know that, okay, so this is what, you know, this is what I'm hearing. And it's not about gaslighting somebody, Mari-Lyn.
Mhm.
It's just
What do you
about
mean
me
gaslight?
stating that,
What is
I'm
gaslighting?
sorry. So gaslighting, it's a term that I wrote an essay about it a couple years ago, and what it means is that if I tell you, Mari-Lyn, you know, what you did to me was, you know, it was very harmful. You know, it was racist, it was sexist, it really hurt my feelings. And if you say, well, LeRon, I'm sorry that you took it that way. You know that that was not my intent. You need to really look at yourself. So it's almost like you sort of flipping the thing on me and telling me that what I'm clearly seeing is not there. And instead of you taking responsibility, you push all of the responsibility on me.
Hmm.
And you know, and there's so, I mean, like gaslighting is extremely prevalent, unfortunately, in the world because people run away from responsibility, right? You know, people run away it's like anti accountability. You
Okay.
know, so it's like, oh, you know, so yeah, that's in a nutshell, that's what gaslighting is. And we, you know, you and I, we could talk about gaslighting for hours.
Yeah, well, I hear it, but I really don't know what it means. It's just like, I was just thinking the other day, you know, because I talk a lot about kindness, and have to stop and think, well, maybe other people don't really know what it means, because maybe it's just a jargon word, and I need to clarify what it means. Um, to me, you know, because it's going to maybe me sound totally different from somebody else. So when you said
Sure.
gaslighting, it's just like I had another interview talked about bias all the time, and I really didn't know what bias means, and so I later looked it up, and really it's a difference of opinion. And so I guess part of my interview
Okay.
thing is for me to say, okay, you know, are there words that we say? We all talk jargon, you know, in our own little community, our own little words, but you know, what do they mean? Because
Right. Yeah. No. Like.
doing that and not even knowing what we're doing that, right? Because
Right.
it always came to me like communication is, it's up to the speaker to make it clear, right? And
A
it's
hundred
just
percent.
the example of somebody gaslighting you. And I'm going, okay, that's because the speaker wasn't clear in their language to communicate
Right.
to you. And they didn't respond the way you wanted them. They more just kind of said, "Oh yeah, you don't matter," kind of thing. And
Exactly, like very dismissive, right?
dismissive, yeah. So when you said gaslighting, to me, that's like being dismissive.
Oh, oh,
Now that you
absolutely, Mary.
explained what it kind of means, now I
Yeah,
understand.
no, it's
Yeah,
definitely, like dismissing someone's experience, someone's feelings. That's classic gaslighting. I mean, like, if you were to tell me, if I told you about an experience that I faced, said store owner was discriminating against me, right?
right,
And you ask, oh, LeRon, are you sure? Did you do something maybe that could have caused that? Are you blowing this out of proportion? You see, that's pretty much dismissing my experience, and that is a form of gaslighting. That's just and the cool thing about, well, I shouldn't say the cool thing, but the thing about this, Mari-Lyn, is this all ties into listening.
right,
So if you dismiss what I'm saying to you, you didn't listen. Not only didn't you not listen, but you really didn't care to listen because you already had your mind made up before I even told you.
right. Okay, so we got to stop doing that. So what kind of, we gave some people some ideas of what they could do to become a better listener, because that was sort of like my agenda for the call, I guess, because you were talking
Sure.
to me previously that you would like to more talk about listening. Listening became easier for you once you started being a writer and you started doing research to write your book and
Right.
everything, right?
Absolutely.
And
Yes, ma'am.
so don't call me ma'am. And
Sorry about that, Mari-Lyn.
that's like ignoring what I just said.
Oh, wow.
So I would like you to take the last few minutes of our call to just talk about, what people can really, how they can embrace to listen better. And maybe like for you, you might say, well, start writing, because maybe that'll help you learn to listen better. I don't know. I'm just like, I have a few ideas of my own.
Sure.
But I'm sure I'm not on the call for just me. I'm here because you're here
Got
with
it.
me, right? Having a conversation about listening. So maybe you can just share some ideas about, or tips, some other ways that people can learn how to listen better. And that would also create a
Okay.
very impactful legacy for somebody, right?
Definitely. Absolutely. I mean, it's when you, it's funny because when you are known as a good listener, when you are known as someone that people can confide in you, then that means that more people will trust you with sensitive information, and they'll let their guard down, hence being more vulnerable.
Right.
For me, the number one thing is to listen, to not respond. Again, like as we said earlier, Mari-Lyn, it's just sit, just sit with it for a while. Just listen, like have both ears tuned in, like, and just really think about what the person is saying when they're telling you.
Right.
When we don't do that, when we listen to respond, we miss so many things,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, there could just be crucial things being said in the way that it's said, right? And the body language that it was said. See, there's so many things that we sort of miss out on because we just can't just wait to just jump up and just start yapping.
Right.
So definitely, listen to not respond. Don't listen to respond. That's one that's one thing. And two, I would say that one of the ways of being a good listener is to ask questions.
Right.
It's funny. It's like I hear this from some of my girlfriends. They'll say, I was on this date with this guy and he didn't listen to a word I said. He didn't ask me any kind of questions.
Right.
And it's like when you ask questions to somebody, that means that you're engaged in the conversation, right? That means that you are invested in the conversations. Because when someone asks you a question, you give them an answer.
Right.
Sometimes it may lead to you wanting to ask another question, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's how it works. And I mean,
Right.
if you take those two things, then I'm pretty confident that you will start to become a better listener. And I guess finally, again, Mari-Lyn,
Mm-hmm.
give them your full attention.
Right.
Shut the laptop, put the phone down, turn the chair directly to them, or if you're out at a coffee shop, whatever, face them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
I mean, for me, like, I just remember that when and I do it, I do these things 80% of the time. There are some times that I'm just like, okay, blah, blah, I hear you. But it's like, even if you heard what they said, it's almost like, well, did you even care? You
Right.
know?
Right.
So yeah, as they said, Mari-Lyn, like, body language is 90% of all communication, right? Yeah, I mean,
Right.
like, what is it, like 90% of all communication is nonverbal. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah,
I used
those
to go-
those three things.
I used to have this guy I go out and have coffee with all the time, and we were kind of mastermind partners and everything. And every time we went to
Hmm.
a coffee shop, he was always looking around me, and I'm going, and I moved my head around. I was, like, what are you looking at? And it
Right,
was just kind of funny. And I realized later he wasn't really interested in what I had to say. And
right,
so it was like, okay, you don't need to meet him anymore. Even though you
right. Yeah,
are partners,
it's
right?
almost it's almost like,
Wasn't
like,
interested.
he didn't really care. He really didn't care about what you had to say. I mean, he
Yeah,
may had been listening to you, but
yeah,
was it really important? And you could have been saying some stuff that you maybe had been afraid to say, or that something that's very exciting. I mean, it's
right.
like, just, yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah, definitely body language.
like you were
Look
saying,
at the
body language.
um, I'm
you know,
sorry, what was that?
just like you were saying, the body language, and then if really listen to them, like you say, when you're in a coffee shop, sometimes it's hard because there's so much activity going around you, but just be really focused. I guess that's
Ex- yeah, you know what? That is the key word, Mari-Lyn, today. Focus.
yeah,
Focus.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I enjoyed having our conversation. I'm sure we can still carry on and do another conversation like this another time.
Absolutely.
And,
No, I know.
you know,
This has been an awesome conversation to have. Like, I'm always up to talk about listening.
or like talk about the jargon language that we all use, and when we have to stop and say, and somebody might not ask me, what do you mean by that? But
Right.
I
Yeah.
think
No.
that's a good point of conversation. Like, can you?
No. Clarity is real. I
Yeah,
mean, and I think you hit the nail right on the head, Mari-Lyn, when you said the responsibility is on the communicator.
right,
Like, you have to be. I mean, like, for me, so my mother, she's the best communicator I know, because whenever I go away from her, I know exactly what point she was trying to make. And
right,
so that has bled into the way that I write. I try to be as clear as possible. I try to make my points concise. I don't use big words, because, I mean, it's cool to use words like ascertain, or, what is cavalier? Those words sound good, right? But it's also is good. But saying stuff like, okay, I'm trying to understand what you're saying, or you're acting silly. Like, it doesn't make you a great communicator because you use big words. Hell, I still say dope.
yeah.
So that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother
That's
day.
another
But
conversation. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for joining me, Barton. And we'll be, I'm sure, having more conversations about listening, and then conversations about conversations.
absolutely. All right,
Okay,
Mari-Lyn,
thanks
thank
for
you so much
joining.
for allowing me to have you on your show. I really appreciate it. This
Okay.
has been a really good combo.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And if you want to hear about more about him, you can go to podcast.hardatworkonline.org, and he'll be there, and you can certainly listen to the call there. Anyway, thank you for joining us. Make yourself a kind day. Bye.